Alright, hello and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to Lotro plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we added Badges of Taste and Dishonour to the TitanBar currencies, and we published our changes as a patch. And in the week that's followed, that patch has been rolled into the main TitanBar plugin. So we're going to take a look at that and see what that looks like. And today we're going to move on away from TitanBar and to the MinstrelBuffs plugin, or rather the Out-of-Combat Timer patch that adds some cool stuff to it, but it has an occasional timing bug that I'd like to fix because I use that plugin all the time. As always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. And in the meantime, let's take a look at what's going on. Let me go ahead and switch scenes here. There we go. Okay. So let's go take a look. If we go to Lotro interface, and we see TitanBar has been updated recently. And what do we have? We have the November 1 release. Duriel went ahead and included some of the stuff that we did here. They even shouted out thanks before. Awesome. So corrected the issue where TitanBar ignores reputation loss, added Badge of Taste and Badge of Dishonour as currencies, and fixed an issue with the wallet window list box where the scroll bar didn't appear correctly. Those are all things that we were working on in the last week or two. And they also did a thing which I'm pretty sure is in response to this German comment here about the player info not being big enough. So they were able to roll that update in as well. So awesome. Now this patch is still out there. I think I'll leave it there for a little while. Either I'll come up with something else and it'll be a new patch for a new version, or if someone is still using the 135.24, they can still patch that with that patch. So for right now, it's okay to leave it out there as a historical curiosity, if nothing else. But eventually I'll go ahead and retire it or repurpose it. Okay, awesome. So, what's the plugin that I'm interested in today? Well, there is a plugin called MinstrelBuff, or MinstrelBuffs. MinstrelBuff. This is a patch made by Melida long ago, the release date of 2014, but it is delightful. If you play a minstrel, and if you don't use this, I highly recommend it. It shows you which of your ballads are currently active and which of your anthems are active and for how long. Now, normally a minstrel only has access to 2 or 3 anthems, so this full 6 anthem mode is not used very often. So this is what this looks like. And the patch that I made was to address the question, and there's a whole video on this out there if you're interested, but if you look at any of your ballads as a minstrel, they say expires if out of combat for 9 seconds. Well, what does that mean? Because it doesn't mean that. For instance, if I go ahead and use my major ballad, I have definitely been out of combat for more than 9 seconds, but the bonus that I get from that ballad is still live. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull up the existing MinstrelBuff with Out-of-Combat Timer, and that'll give us a little bit of insight into what's going on. So, do it again. I bring up the major ballad, and in this case, we can see there's a little timer going down underneath the window. And that's our out-of-combat timer, because Lotro doesn't actually mean expires if out of combat for 9 seconds. The actual algorithm is more complicated. It starts a 9-second timer that counts down if you are not in combat. So despite the fact that I have been out of combat for multiple minutes here, I can still have the effect of a ballad going. In fact, I can get 3 of these ballad effects going before that 9 seconds expires. I can even get some anthems going here. And so that's the other place where this is really useful is, yes, you can use other things, I'm sure, like buff monitors to track your anthems, but having it all together in one little UI here, I find very handy. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is the plugin uses the local client's timing of when we enter and leave combat to approximate what we currently think the server is doing for those ballot expirations. And sometimes it gets out of sync where the plugin thinks, oh, the ballots should be expired, and so the timer should have stopped, but they didn't. And sometimes the other way, where the plugin thinks, oh, that's fine. We got back into combat. The timer is running, but the server says, no, that's not. The ballots are gone. And so getting the plugin to respect either or both of those would be great. Okay, well, here we are in Tinder. We can see my friendly hunter is attempting to get up to me. She may be having some problems. Anyway, this is a lovely building in Tinadar. I highly recommend it if you're looking for scenic overpasses. A kidmate of ours just showed me this today, both that it exists and how to get up here. If I knew before that, I can't remember. So thanks, Rear Willow. All right. So the most common way to trigger one of these out of sync that I've seen is to rapidly get in and out of combat, because the underlying algorithm seems to be what I'll describe here in a minute. And the plugin doesn't seem to be able to track quite to what the server is expecting. So we're just going to nip on over here in the Lone Lands. I still have, let's see, coming in here to, whoa, was that gold? Oh, good. Already being gotten. So I'm going to go ahead and load up deed tracker here. Oh, it doesn't have my deed information, does it? Oh, that's sad. Okay. I guess I won't be using that. Built-in deed tracker, here we are, Lone Lands. So we're still working on Spider Slayer. And these should be low enough that even on deadly difficulty, I should be able to get in and out of combat rapidly. Okay. So the underlying algorithm for minstrel ballads seems to be when you start a combat after having not been in combat for at least 9 seconds, you are in combat and your ballads are live. So I am in combat, and the plugin here is reflecting that. The bar is full and it's not moving. But as soon as I leave combat, it starts ticking down a 9-second timer. And if I don't get back into combat within that 9 seconds, then the ballads expire, just like that. So let's get back into combat. Let's get a couple of these ballads going. So I've got 3 ballads. I can start doing my anthems now. We can see that timer is ticking down. So if I get back into combat and I stay in combat for at least, I believe, 5 seconds, then it counts as being back in combat. So excellent. But if I get back into combat and I don't stay in combat long enough, it does not count. And we can see that the bar continues to tick down here. And the ballads expire. So getting in and out and in and out and in and out of combat seems to be what triggers the disconnect between the plugin and the game. So that's what I'm going to try to do here. And conveniently, it also will help finish off this deed. Oh, delightful. Oh, I'll be even more effective at spiders if I get out of healing stance and get into murder stance. Neat. So I'm trying to reproduce the problem here. Aha, there we go. So the ballad's expired, but the timer is still going down. So the plugin thought we were in combat long enough, but the server, or maybe the client, something disagreed. There was just a little bit of a timing mismatch there. And so I don't think there's much to do about that. It's possible that the numbers I guessed during plugin development just aren't quite right. Maybe it's actually supposed to be like 4.9 seconds. But it's more likely that they are just they're just timing issues. And so if the ballads expire the plugin should take that as authoritative. And if the ballads don't expire when we think they should, I don't know if there's much we can do about that, but maybe we can kind of back up to the last decision we made and say, no, it went the other way. That sounds more complicated. So the one I want to handle is ballads expire, therefore stop the timer. That will definitely increase my quality of life as a minstrel. So, unfortunately, it goes pretty fast, but that's the basic replication. Is you have ballads, the timer is still ticking down, but but the ballads expire. They're no longer showing up, which is correct. The plugin is correctly wiping them, but the timer is the new part that I bolted onto the rest of this, and that's the part that's not respecting the ballads disappearing. Okay, so I'm going to start by getting this bountiful iron, and then what I'm going to do is dig into the code side of things and see, first of all, is it possible to add any sort of debugging? Because as much as I enjoy slaughtering all the spiders in the Lonelands just to test a plugin, it sometimes is really convenient just to press buttons and make the plugin pretend like you have a ballad. So because this is reflecting the live state of combat, I'm not sure how possible that is, but that would be really handy if we could do that, and if there's a button that we could say that says pretend like there are no more ballads. Jerosi says, hello. New to using plugins on Lotro, is there a plugin that tracks emboldened blades stacks on champion? That's an excellent question. Little Redhead is typing in, first of all, just a command for general plugins we think are cool. One of the things that people have a lot of fondness for is, I'm going to say Buff Monitor? Is that one? Buff Monitor or BuffBars. I'll double check which ones I'm looking at here. Unfortunately, I don't use either of them very often, so I am... Okay, Buff Monitor is not the one I was thinking of. It's the other one. So BuffBars is one that a lot of people are very fond of. You can customize it to track specific buffs. So if the buff is on your character, oftentimes you can customize it to show you that information. So, as we so often do, let's go ahead and pull up the plugin compendium. This is a optional program you can install on your computer, and with it you can go and add new plugins. So BuffBars, let's go ahead and add that in. Now, not every plugin that's available on Lotro interface is included in Lotro plugin compendium, but many of them are, especially the most popular ones. And as we can see, it just automatically installed. So let's go ahead and go into our plugin manager. And remember, if you do an install of a plugin while the game's running, you have to hit the green refresh arrow, and then you can go ahead and load it up. So the default window for BuffBars shows you all of the buffs that you have, but you can customize that in a way that I'm going to be stumbling through because I don't actually use this myself very often. So if we go ahead and make a new window, and we want that one just to be called B4, and we want, let's see, so if we go ahead and delete a few of these things and add something. Oh wow, effect trigger. So that's fun. Let's go ahead and do a custom one. And we're going to type the name of this, and we want it to be difficulty deadly. And is that a buff or a deal? Oh, we're going to call that a buff. Okay. And let's just accept that. And accept. Well, it didn't do quite what I was hoping for. I know there's a way to, I think there's a way to just limit what shows up in this window, so it's not all the things. But that's where I am going to have some problems, because again, I haven't done this myself, I just know it is possible from what people have said. So I do give BuffBars a try. Also, let's go ahead and give a shout out. I don't know if it will specifically help with this, but there's also a new plugin called Auras by Exogenesis. And this is one that, as it says, aims to drastically improve the visual clarity of various class, proc effects, resources, and cooldowns. So I know at least one of the C words. You were asking about champions. Champions are one of the classes that it can do something with. Let's go ahead and view this actually. So Auras will give you a display that looks something like this. So it'll track your whatever resource you have and will show you skills that are available. Now this may not be specifically useful for you. I haven't played a champion very much at all except for getting titles on Treebeard. But it could also be a gameplay improvement for you. So give that a try as well. Okay. Yeah, so here's an example of a window that has, that's Buff Monitor, sorry. Buff Monitor is a different plugin, I quite like it, where you can just specify certain things to, that you're looking out for, like your fortifying food or your scrolls of battle lore or warding, and then it will show you a blue bar showing the time left if it's on, and it'll just be a blank bar if it's not, and that's a reminder of, oh, I need to go activate that scroll, or my hope tokens weren't off, or whatever. Or hey, my hunter fast feet are off. Hey hunter, can you turn those on? That kind of thing. Okay, so I'll close that for right now. Cool, thanks for the question. Let me know if that works out for you. Okay, so we have this plugin window here. And as I mentioned, it would be really useful if we could tell the plugin to pretend like there is a ballad here. So first step is to figure out how does it know there's a ballad, and then can we do something with that information? So I'm gonna go stand here by this spider so that I know that I can activate the ballads again. And let's go ahead and open up a text editor. My text editor of choice is Sublime Text. You can use whatever you want, up to and including a notepad, but the more fancy ones will give you a little bit more control over your coding environment. We're going to come into Lord of the Rings Online, plugins, and Minstrel Buffs comes in a folder called Minstrel Buffs. And it is set up slightly different than a lot of plugins, which usually have an author and then a plugin a folder underneath that. So in this case, the MinstrelBuffs.plugin is pointing at code in MinstrelBuff window. And there's a docs here, which, oh, that's mine. Okay, good. So let's take a look in MinstrelBuff window. Now, when in doubt, when we're digging into either a new plugin or a plugin that we have coded in but it's been a long time, look for a function called main and just open that sucker up. In fact, if you see it, if you see an underscore init dot Lua, that can be useful too, because that will kind of tell you where the plugin thinks it wants to load. Interesting. Okay. MinstrelBuffs Windows. All right, cool. So we have a main file. And let's see what goes on here. In fact, if we go look at the .plugin folder, we'll also see that that's going straight to main as well. That's good to know. So we are importing Turbine and Turbine gameplay in this file. We're also importing a bunch of other MinstrelBuff window files. And cool, we are getting a reference to the local player and a reference to the effects of the local player. That's how we're knowing when those buffs happen. That's awesome. Oh, neat. We have a helper function, write buffs to chat. I am very interested to try that out. And apparently a commented out debug function that happens. Okay. We have a show window function in main. That's interesting. Okay. And in this, we're doing a bunch of things that I wouldn't actually have thought were related to showing the window, but were probably very convenient to write here at the time. So when the effect, what is effect change callback? Okay, so we're adding callbacks, or we're using a function called add callback. Now this is a function you'll see in a bunch of plugins. It's not a built-in function. So where is that coming from? Let's take a look. So we're going to go ahead and do a search, a recursive search in this folder for add callback. Ah, good. It's in eventhelper.lua. So these are a couple of helper functions that you're going to see in a lot of different plugins, add callback and remove callback. And this is, in more complicated plugins, this is a way to have multiple callbacks registered for a single event instead of just saying, well, I don't care about your event. This function is the one that I want to have called. And so what do we add the callback to an object, event, callback. And so if the object's event isn't there, then we can just use a callback. But if it was already there, we want to have a table of them. And removing it is just inverting that. Excellent. Okay, so effect list, when an effect is added to the effect list or removed or cleared, what is that? Well, we're dealing with the actual Lua API here. So if we come in to the API for local player get effects, excellent. Local player get effect. This is not something I work with a lot. So, okay, so it returns an effect list. Excellent. And what do we have here? Effects list does have added, removed, and cleared. Interesting. So there is a different callback for when an effect is removed or when all the effects are cleared. I don't currently understand the difference between those, but I can see why you would want to pay attention to both of them, because if all of them are removed, then by definition at least one of them has been removed. Cool. Okay, so we have an effect change callback function. And that function is just saying refresh the effect display. Cool. And in refresh effect display, this is kind of fascinating to me because we've got some Windows stuff mixed in with some not Windows stuff in a way that I wouldn't think is the quote unquote the right way to write, but obviously the plugin works. So that's fine. Get ready. Oh yes, thanks, Moonbot. Yes, we are running out of time. We're now in November, so we have less than a month to use the Let's Request 2021 code. Okay, so in show window, we have defined some callback stuff. We want to know if combat has changed, if the mounts change, minstrel stance change. Let's see, coda skill reset time changed callback, cry skill reset time changed callback, major ballad reset time changed callback. Those are all some very specific things we want to know. That's delightful. Okay, let's take a look at what all that means. Well, I guess we don't need to dissect the whole plugin. Let's figure out ballads. We're really just looking for any of these ballads coming in. So, ballad. Refresh effect display. Okay, well this is what we were seeing when as the callback for the effect change. So the effect count, ballad effect place, anthem effect place. So it looks like we're keeping indices into where we are drawing in this window. Okay, that's cool. Ballad. What else do we have for ballad? Okay, so we're going through the effects. And, you know, this is actually might be a great time to look at that write buffs to chat function. because it'll do two things. It'll tell me what that does, and it'll tell me when this function is getting called. So that is a class function here. We're just going to call writeBuff to chat. Now, real question, how do we reload this? MinstrelBuff, options. We'll just unload it and reload it. That's the simplest. Some plugins come in an apartment, so plugins list. We can see in a list that is behind my window. Let's go ahead and create a new tab. We're going to need that. Great. And we're going to call this tab, rename, we're going to call that standard and link it to the standard chat channel. Excellent. So when we load the function, we see, okay, we do see the list of buffs on me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then the count is correct. We can see emboldening finish tier 5. All right, is it coming in the same order? Find the path. Dissonance. Awesome. Okay, so not only are we seeing something corresponding to each of these, but we're also seeing them in the same order. Nice. So emboldening finish, find the path, dissonance, and story pace. Excellent. And if I go ahead and change my stance, it looks like we called that current buffs 10, current buffs 9. Okay. Subscriber buffs is the last one. Oh, cool. Okay, so it is just walking through this list in that order. Excellent. Well, resonance is first. That's funny. Okay, and if I go ahead and add a ballad to all of this, we can see current buffs 11, current buffs, oh, we're at 13, must have procced something else, and current buffs 14, great. And then, what are we seeing? Those gifts of Gunbat are distracting, aren't they? When there were 13 or 14, there were ballad healing bonus, ballad healing bonus. That seems about right. Let's pop that back up here and see what that was. Ballad healing bonus. Great. Okay, so we're definitely seeing ballad information. So how is the plugin translating that into ballads being here? This is more of a curiosity thing. I don't think we need to know it, but I don't have a lot of experience with translating effects to user interface. So this is a great chance to take a look at that. Okay, so, oh, interesting. So they're saving off a sorted list. Cool. Oh, okay. So in order to get something equivalent to this list, they're sorting by the start time. Nice. Okay, so iterating through the effect count for each of the sorted effects. And then we are checking the effect name to see, is it a valid ballad effect? Okay. And then we can see it's using localization information. So we can maybe find strings, resources. Nope. Themes. All right. Let's go ahead and do a search for a valid ballad effects EN. And we can see that is in minstreleffects.lua. All right, fair enough. So we can see ballad damage bonus, ballad power bonus, ballad healing bonus, and then Dirge, Saga, Enchant. Those might be real. I don't have access to a war mount on this server. That's okay. So valid ballad effects EN, great, and presumably there are French and German versions here somewhere. Okay. So is valid effect, we're going to get, does that exist? Hello, new person in chat. Welcome. We are digging into the MinstrelBuff plugin to figure out if we can fix a bug in there. So the MinstrelBuff plugin is this window right here, and it tracks your ballads and anthems as a minstrel. One of the things the patch that I'm working on does is track your out-of-combat timer so that you know when your ballads are going to expire. Otherwise, the tooltip just says it expires if out of combat for 9 seconds, which is just not the whole story. It's much more involved than that. I wonder if there's a spider around here. Excellent. So we can see the plugin says, yes, I'm in combat, the bar is full, and as soon as I leave combat, we can see that this bar starts ticking down, and that's how long I have before the ballads will expire. Well, it looks like I didn't find anything else to get back into combat. Ballads go away. Awesome. So every once in a while, this gets out of sync. Ballads go away, and the plugin doesn't realize it, and the timer keeps on ticking down. And so that's what I'd like to address today. Okay, so right now we're just digging into how the plugin is doing what it does. As I mentioned last week, sometimes it's a fun exercise just to read someone else's code and figure out what is it doing and why is it doing it, and is that how I would have written it, can be going on in the back of your head. So we were just seeing, okay, if we haven't already drawn 3 of these ballads, and if the effect we're looking at is a ballad, then show effect the actual in-game effect reference that we have and where it's going to be. Now this is interesting. I feel like buff window itself should probably be tracking where these things are, but that's okay. And we go ahead and slide over to the next slot. Cool. So this right here, this tells us that we might be able to go ahead and fake out the buff window by just calling show effect. So what I mentioned before is it'd be cool if there was some debug ability here without having to go out and get into combat. So let's go ahead and add an option here to try that out. Okay, so first of all, options. There is an option window file. That's probably where these options are being controlled. Let's jump on in here and add a feature. Now, first of all, as we've seen in some of my other plugins, it is nice to have a flag that you can just set to false so you don't have to delete a bunch of code. If it's useful now, it's probably going to be useful later. So first of all, let's go ahead and set show debug options true, and we'll just mark that to false later to hide whatever it is we're doing. Okay. Now, place controls. We have the combat visibility. We have the theme. Excellent. So below that, let's go ahead and add a button that tries to add a ballad. In fact, we can have a button for each type of ballad. This function takes an effect, an actual in-game effect. This might be harder than I was thinking, but let's go ahead and add the button anyway. So, how do we make a button? Local debug add effect button equals turbine.ui.label. Sorry, button. But we probably want it to be a Lotro button. So we probably want to come in here and use the turbine.ui.lotro, and I've accidentally all capsed it, lotro.button. So let's make that. Remember, the first thing we want to do is parent it, otherwise it won't be drawn. And apparently, these things are just getting called with something called parent. That's fine. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and... Okay. They're not doing locals, they're just adding it to self. We can do that. So self dot debug add effect button. We want to go ahead and set the position to be below the previous thing. So let's see, the previous list was, looks like we're doing an indent of 20. And the previous was 100 plus 20 times theme count plus, let's give it a little extra margin as well. And then we need a size. I don't know what size is going to be good for this, so we'll just set size to be 150 and 20. And we'll see how that is. And the final thing we need is text, and because this is a debug only, we don't have to worry about localizing it. It's just, you know, something that we're using during testing. Add valid. Okay. So let's go ahead and reload this plugin and see, did we write that correctly? Excellent, there's an add valid button. The one thing we don't do is we don't have a callback for that. So self.debug button dot, oh, what's it called? Well, if we go to the documentation here for a button, we can see that it has events of click. Great. Click equals, we're going to call it an anonymous function that takes sender and args. Excellent. So in here, just to make sure that we're doing it right, shell.WriteLine, we can go ahead and just say clicked, and we'll know that we've hooked that up correctly. Great, we can see clicked came out when we're clicking it. That's great. Now what we actually want to do is, I'm not sure. That's what we're working on, but now we have a way to go ahead and do that. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and add one that says, hey, there are no more ballads. In fact, this one is called add effect. It should really be add ballad. And then this one, clear effect, should be clear ballads. That's the specific thing we're looking for. Okay. So whoopsie, they are on top of each other. Let's go ahead and introduce a local here. Local y equals and then we can just say y equals y plus 30, and we can just make use of that again. Okay, so now they're not on top of each other. We have an add ballad, we have clear ballads. They don't do anything yet. I'm not sure how we're going to hook that up, but we're ready to have debug functionality. Awesome. So what is going on here, to quote a Hobbit? What is going on here? Okay, so we know that when the actual effect list changes, we get called refresh effect display. And in refresh effect display, we are going through this list of effects, and these are effects coming in from the local player function get something something. Effect list came from local player get effects. Of course it did. Get effects, which is actually an actor function. And effect list is a list that we can see, does it contain a thing? Can we get it? Okay. And then finally, what is an effect? An effect's going to have these functions. And I guess the question is, how do we use it? Because if we're trying to mimic an effect, maybe we only need a couple of specific things. So we have the buff window show effect. Let's dig into buff window and see what it does when we say show effect. Okay, So get effect display on an index. Okay, so let me go ahead and drag this thing over to the side here so we can keep seeing it as a reference. Okay, so get effect display index. So we know we're going to spot 1, 2, or 3. Excellent. So we have a window. And window set effect. That's harder. Okay, so what is in here? It is an array. And it's going to be a Lotro effect display. Oh, okay, that sounds hard to spoof. Okay, Lotro effect display. Okay. Neat. So we're using a built-in game mechanism to show an effect. Awesome. That's not something I've had to run into yet. So this is new and exciting. Okay. So in the members, we can see which ones are inherited from control, and anything that's not inherited by control is the thing that's relevant for this specific thing. So get effect, excellent. Can I see this without all the derived stuff? I feel like I was able to at some point. It's okay. So set effect, and then a lot of this is that. Okay. Oh, yes, of course, they're listed over here on the left. So we just have get effect and set effect. So can we create our own effect? That would be cool. Well, let's give that a try. When we have that option window here, let's see if we can make a new local effect test equals, and we're just going to go ahead and say that's a turbine.gameplay.effect. So that's the first thing, is that just going to crash my system because that's not valid. Okay, attempt to, oh, I got an error message, but it didn't show up over here. Let me add an error here. Okay, 72, attempt to call a field effect. Okay, yeah. Turbine.gameplay.effect, it didn't like that. That's fine, that's fair. It feels like we should be able to make an effect in some way, but knowing the category and the description and the duration and the icon and the ID and the name and the start time, we would be effectively mimicking that. And I think we could maybe do that, but let's go the other route. It's easy enough for me to make a ballad. I can just use a major ballad here, and I don't even have to be in combat. So the trick that I'm really looking for is pretending like those ballads have disappeared. So let's focus on that instead, and then circle back onto arbitrarily creating the ballads with the click of a button. So in refresh effect display, and I guess the real question is, can we get this from options? Let's see. Okay, we have that, we have this. Where are we instantiating that? Okay, good. We have an MB main. Okay. So in our options window, could we set a global variable, call that function to say, just pretend like there aren't any ballads there, and then see what happens. So that's what I'm looking at right now. So at the top of this file, we're going to go ahead and say, what are we going to call it? We're going to call it debug ignore ballads. Ballad effects equals false. Okay, so in this here, we're going to go ahead and say that. The function was refresh effect display. So we're going to call refresh effect display, but first we want to go ahead and set this new value here equals to true. And then after the display is refreshed, we'll set it back to false. And now in here, we want to go ahead and take into account that new variable. So if the ballad is less than or equal to 3, and it's a valid, and we're not ignoring ballad effects, and we can put that in a new line for readability, then do this. Okay, so that's a thing that might be possible. If we go ahead and load that back in, if I go ahead and add a ballad, add a second ballad, oh, I think I put in the wrong callback. Okay, cool. We can see I clicked the button and the ballads stopped being there. Now that's temporary, of course, because it is responding live to any changes in effects, but that gives us an ability. Now let me go ahead and move that code into the clear ballads button. And for now, let's go ahead and comment out the other button. I don't think it's going to work easily, and I don't think we need it right now. So unload, reload, back to the options. So I can create a ballad, and I can just tell it to refresh its list, pretending like ballads aren't there. Now, if I make a second one, it's going to redraw those. And if I make a third one, it'll, well, timer ran out. So I can go ahead and clear those ballads. That's excellent. Okay, so that is... as those other buffs are wearing off, every time an effect changes, it's coming back, but that's okay. Okay, so we can simulate no ballads being in place. So the real question is, what do we do with that? So down below here, after we've processed all of these effects, we can see there's a check. If ballad effect equals 1, and we think ballads are active, then we are supposed to be making sure the combat timer stopped. Let's figure out why that's not working, because right now it's not working. If I hit clear, we can see that timer is still going. So ballads ended. That's supposed to be in buff window, ballad ended. Okay. And that is supposed to be passing on to the in combat time display, ballad ended. All right, well, that's a whole nother control. And we have ballad ended. If ballad ended, it's because our out of combat timer expired. In case we didn't protect it correctly, cancel the combat timer. It's great. This is what should be working and isn't. So let's go on with that. So first of all, how do these timers work? Well, the MinstrelBuffs plugin has a control, and it just keeps making the control smaller because it's very easy to color the background of control a solid color and then just make the control smaller to be the size we want it to be. It's much harder to draw part of the background one color and part of the background another color, or no color at all. And so we can see the transparency of the underlying window is restored as this ticks on by. It's not very transparent, but it's a little bit. Let me see if I can find a better background. It's mostly opaque. Okay, so we're taking that bar and we're continually making it smaller. That's happening on a timer. That's happening in the update function. So setting that combat timer to width is not being sufficient. We're trying to clear the secondary timer. Okay, cool. Is there another timer happening? What's going on? Where are we setting this width? Okay. So, in fact, it might be kind of useful to know where set combat timer width is being called. And with what? Although that's going to be a lot of debug spam. That's okay. Turbine.shell.writeLine lets us write something out to standard chat. And we'll go ahead and just write out width right there. If we go ahead and reload and go ahead and start up a ballad, we can see in chat, rushing by, the widths of that bar. And if we hit clear ballads, okay, that's what's happening. 0 happened, but then it scrolled on past because the very next update cycle, some timer kept on going. So that's a problem. We've stopped a timer, but maybe not all the timers. Okay, so where all is set combat timer width being called? All right, entering combat. Cool, we're not entering combat, so that's probably not it. Ballad ended, yes, that's the good one. And also in the update function. So maybe that's a problem. Maybe we should stop wanting updates. Now, what does clear secondary timer do, and why is... Okay, set start time nil, that's cool. We have a lot of timers going on. Let's look at the constructor and see, do we have more than one timer going on? Well, of course, when we are in, I wonder if there's anything alive near here. Well, here's a spider, but is there a second spider? Yeah, there's an orc, good enough. Oh, my goodness, I forgot about that down there. Okay, so we can see that we have a timer here, and there's a secondary bar that fills up, and that's the secondary timer. And when that bar fills up, then in the plugin's parlance, we've entered a secondary combat, or we've stayed in that secondary combat long enough to reset that 9-second timer. And now we can see the out-of-combat timer is counting down, and ballads are gone. Okay, cool. So we have a 2 timer controls, it looks like. We have the combat timer and the secondary combat timer. These are both timer controls, which was, I don't know if that's something that I introduced way back when or if that was already present. But it's just that idea of something that just shrinks on down according to the time. So we have a clear secondary timer. Why do we not have a clear primary? Well, we can emulate that. We can get the set start time with time, so we can go ahead and set the start time to nil. We won't have a helper function for it right now, but that's okay. And where were we? Ballad and ended. Okay. So what if we did self set secondary start time nil? Would that be sufficient? Let's go ahead and reload this up. And wow, there's just several orcs down here. Perfect. Okay, so Still in combat with the second one. Excellent. And if I hit clear ballads, oh cool. So obviously the ballads are back because they didn't really clear, but it did clear the timer. So it looks like when I attempted to make that correction long ago, I only cleared the secondary timer, but not the primary timer, which was just not sufficient. Apparently I'm being tricked or treated upon. Two can play that game, but only one of us is immune. Okay, so I'm going to run back in the direction of where I think spiders exist. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and activate a ballad. Sweet. And oh, okay, so that's not... So setting it to nil was a problem for future timers. So that's not compatible with how the plugin is currently working. So let's dig into that a little bit. What's going on with this line here that is messing it up? Well, what if I'm in combat? Oh, okay, I'm getting error messages. Attempt to perform arithmetic on a nil value. So we're just not expecting that to ever be nil. Okay, 98. Oops, line 98. Get combat start time. Okay, so there is a function called get combat start time. What if instead of nil it was 0? Would that be good? What's going on with the secondary timer? Secondary time. Get secondary timer. Secondary timer control. So those are really delegating to that secondary timer. Okay. So I am not following through with what those are doing. Okay, so let's go back to ballad ended. Okay, so if instead of nil, if we just pass 0, that will probably be a similar effect. 0 is way in the past. Let's try that out. Okay, so clear ballads and start a new one. That's still not... Oh, interesting. Well, we're back in combat. Okay. Well, that's counting down. And let's get back into combat. Okay. Well, the bar is behaving as expected now. If I clear ballads, that goes away. Let's go ahead and get back into combat. Okay, I came back. But did I just take too long? Clear, back into combat. Okay. Well, that's promising. The 0 seems to be doing okay. And clear those ballads. Well, that spider is in for a long run. Where are you going? Oops. Oh well. Okay. So setting the timer to 0 seems to be producing consistent results. We can get back into combat. Awesome. So here we are ticking down. If I go ahead and get back into combat here, and if I don't last long enough, oh, well, I was trying to kill it. Okay, and it kept counting down. Okay, so that's all looking great. So is this gold. So if I go ahead and get into combat and hit clear ballads, The UI is respecting that clear ballads. That is excellent. Okay, I think that's a sufficient fix. Somehow I just did not when I tried this whatever a year ago, I just did not recognize that there were two things that needed to be stopped. And I don't know. I was probably late at night when I was trying it. So that's neat. Now we should probably pull up our source control and see what all have we changed here and how much of it do we need to have changed. So into the MinstrelBuffs we go. Okay. So this was the key line that was definitely important here. And then in main, we had the ignore ballad effects, so we can cancel them. And then we have this option here in the option window. And of course, if we were to come back in to option window and set that to false, then if you come back in here into the UI, we see that I mistyped it. All right, Killrock34 says, is Lotra plugins in Lua? Absolutely. Just like other games like World of Warcraft and many other ones out there, Lua is the language for plugins. So you can see right now we have a file called optionwindow.lua, and this is all Lua programming language inside the plugin. There's an API, which you can find on the Lotro interface website as so if you search for Lotro, Lua API, I'm sure, yep, the first reference there will get you there. And so we can see that I forgot to actually use this option here. So let's go ahead and say if show debug options, then we want to go ahead and do that. Otherwise, don't do that. And just for readability, we'll go ahead and indent there. Oh, we can see this file is using tabs, not spaces. That's so sad. Oh, well. Okay, so unload, reload, awesome. We can see that debug is not there. That button does not exist right now. Oops, wrong window. So, excellent. And if we come back into source control, we can see we do have that option. Really? There we go. We have a new button to cancel out ballads temporarily to test that, that clearing of the timer functionality. And we have the actual line that seems to be fixing the problem. Now, I might run around here for a few minutes just to convince myself that it is fixed, because this is kind of an edge casey thing, right? Like popping in and out and in and out and in and out and in and out of combat just can trigger this in a way that you just don't see if you're running stuff on level. Like we were running around in Avendem earlier for the Epic line. So Epic, I don't know, book 10 or something, right? Book 11 now. And then Southern Trollshaws. So the things we're fighting are also level 50 on deadly mode. So I'm not popping in and out and in and out of combat all the time because things are taking actual non-zero amounts of seconds to defeat. Okay. So. Oh. Well, hey, the ballads disappeared. That was awesome. I mean, it wasn't awesome because I wasn't expecting them to, but the plugin did the thing. Like the bar disappeared. So I'm already very pleased with that. Okay, let's get back in and out of combat real fast. Now we can see that wasn't sufficient to keep us in combat. So we'll go ahead and get into a secondary combat, promote it to a primary combat. Excellent. Now, a side effect to the way the Minstrel algorithm seems to be, if you get into a combat just as that bar is expiring, even if the combat only lasts for a fraction of a second, as long as you're in combat when that 9-second bar expires, it's fine. You get a whole nother 9 seconds. Yeah, I think we just demonstrated that because those spiders did not last. So, same thing here. Destroy it. Oh, I wasn't in combat for quite long enough. Okay. So you do want to be in combat for more than nothing. Excellent. But that's excellent because the plugin did not then show me a bar that was out of sync. Oh, this is so good. I play a minstrel for 99% of my gameplay, and so having this bug be solved is just going to affect me every time I play, pretty much. Well, you don't use it very much in the Haunted Burrow, but besides festivals, it'll be great. The other thing I really like about this, yes, there are other plugins that will show you your Anthem statuses, but I really do like how it collects together ballads and Anthem statuses all in one little UI here. Okay. Cool. Well, let's get a nice little view of the Lonelands here and review what we have. We have a one-line change which allowed us to respect the game's opinion that, nope, your ballads are gone. Now, there was another problem where sometimes the, excuse me, instead of ballads expiring when we're not expecting to, sometimes the timer bar, the plugin says, oh no, that's gone, even though the ballads are still there. And so it would be neat to, when the timer bar expires, to go ahead and check and say, are the ballads actually expired? And if not, what do we do about that? Because that means something that we calculated in the past went wrong, right? And then that opens up the whole, how are we calculating this? And so the in-combat control here has a function update where we do the math, right? Where we go through the logic. And so something in here did not correlate to the game. And so one thing we could do is just say, well, how long has it been since the last time we thought we were in combat? But the reason the bar expired was because we thought it has been 9 seconds. I don't know. That may not be something that I'm prepared to fix right now, right? Like I'll play with it in its current working state for matching expirations and see if I can replicate the other enough to get a sense of what's going on. But ultimately, if you have ballads and the bar isn't there, you're just, it's like working without a plugin at that point, right? You're kind of like, oh, I think I have like 7 seconds left and fingers crossed. So it's not the worst thing in the world. So I think I'll be pretty happy just releasing this one line change. That being said, we are not even at the end of 2 hours yet, so surely there's something else I can do with my time. So I had a thought to go back and add festivity tokens to TitanBar, and while we're doing that, kind of think about how would I redesign the currency system in TitanBar to not require all of what we're about to do it. That being said, if anyone else has ideas on things to look at, things to play around with, shout them out in chat while I reposition myself off of this giant rock. Oh yeah, not even any falling damage. Chromite says BuffBars and the patch for BuffBars. Chromite, I'm not entirely sure I know what you're referring to. What's you want me to look at BuffBars? Is there something that's not working with BuffBars? Let's pull up BuffBars and take a look. Okay, so we have BuffBars. Oh, you posted this in Discord. You did. Thank you for the reminder. Do I even have Discord open? I may not. It's been weeks since since you sent that in. All right. Yes, if it's been that long, sometimes I have just forgotten. Let me go ahead and pull up Discord here on the other screen and pull open your idea. In the meantime, what I find fascinating is so many people seem to use BuffBars, and as far as I can tell, it has not been really changed in a long time. Looks like we have an update from 2017. You know, hound people. I don't need you to hound me, but occasionally I do need reminders. Okay, so where did this go? Chromite. BuffBars with added patch for button. Doesn't disappear with F12. If you make a change to BuffBar, you get a non-updating copy of it on the screen. Need to update potions for cooldowns. Oh, that was a different thing. All right, well, let's take a look at BuffBars. So, is that the one where... Oh yes, so I do have it here. Now, one thing I don't know is how to use BuffBars at all, and this is actually kind of on me. I should definitely play around with this plugin more because a lot of people seem to really love it. But in the meantime, my attempt to make a second window here failed, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. So B4, let's remove that and accept. Excellent. Well, that's fun. What are you? You are the Eye of Sauron. Yeah, that's fair. Oh, nice. Is that kind of a logarithmic display? That's cool. I appreciate that because something that's going to last for 3 minutes is a lot further away. Okay, so maybe I can get this thing to poison me real fast. Poison me. There we go. Okay, I've got lots of effects. That's a neat way to represent it. I like it. Okay, and as we can see on BuffBars, we do have the debuffs up top here. That's very handy. Yeah, I even got my little buff there. Huh. Okay, cool. I'm almost dead, but that's okay. Thank you to my hunter for keeping me alive. Oh, I kind of wish you could hover over here and remind yourself what that effect is. Okay, that's just fear. Fun. Okay. All right, well, that's really spiffy. I can see why people like that. All right, and you have sent out a link into chat. Let me go ahead and pop that open. Okay, and that's the BuffBars MAJ Update 2017. Okay, cool. So let's go back into the plugin compendium, BuffBar, and it looks like that patch is not included in Lotro plugin compendium. That's okay. Full glass. Nope, I don't see it there. So we'll go ahead and download. Cool. So let's take a look. We'll go ahead and extract that with just the built-in Windows as zip file extraction. Yeah, it is in French. That's okay. It does not need to be not in French. But what we're going to go ahead and do is come into Documents and Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins. Excellent. So we can see we have a Pengross plugin. Spooky spider poison. Oh my goodness. And we have a Pengross plugin. That makes it really easy to fire up the file comparison utility of your choice. I use Beyond Compare. And just to see what's different. What do they do? What would you say you're doing here? Great. And we're going to go ahead and expand this. And we can see there are just a few files that are being changed here. And that's a very common thing for a patch. You only change what you need to. So, just out of curiosity, init. All right. Flag visible equals true. Cool. Well, hey, while I'm thinking about that. Oh, I do want to look at the differences before we come on in and actually install it. All right, set once update. True. Update function. If it's visible, set visible. Otherwise false. All right. Seems reasonable. That's the effect window. There is an icon that they're adding. Interesting. All right. What is MHJ? Is that French for one of the expansions? Maybe. All right. For the quick slots bar, we also are saying we want updates, and then when that update fires, set visible or set false. Now, this is actually something really suspicious because they're not turning the set once updates off, and the pattern that I would normally expect here is set once updates true, and the very first thing you do in that update function is to say set once updates false. And then the next time you're changing that flag, you do the same thing. Set once true, and then we look at the flag visible, and then set ourselves to want false. What this seems to do is to just say, just tell me every frame, and every frame I will look at that flag and make a yes/no decision. So I would not, unless I'm misreading this, I don't think this is as performant as it could be. So that's a thing to think about. Okay. Exceptions for Bjornings, it looks like. Power changed. All right, yeah, cool. You don't need power. All right, slider item. Interesting. They're adding a parent. That doesn't seem too relevant, but slider window, same thing, set once updates, and then update visibility. And then visible equals false. Okay, cool. Anything else that we want to look at? There's icons here. Excellent. Drag bar. Set multi-line false. Fascinating. Okay. And the BuffBars plugin, where we presumably just, okay, add an image. Nice. Okay, so I have a sense of what that is doing. Let me go ahead and first, I'm going to make a backup of what's currently here because I want to be able to go back and forth between them. Okay, so I'll just call that pre-patch. And I'm going to pull that out and call it patch files only. Cool. And then we can go ahead and drag all that over. Oops, I'm going to copy it over so I keep a copy of them. And we're going to replace each of the files. Okay, so unload all, load BuffBars, great. So Chromie says the bug I'm referring to with that patch, it makes it so if you make changes to your current BuffBars and you have BuffBars showing it, it makes a frozen copy of the BuffBars on your screen. Well, that's fascinating. How do I make a oh, what's that? Oh. Well, that's interesting. Presumably that's the icon. Cool. What's going on? Oh, deed completed. Nice. I'm going to have to write down that I did that. All right, Spider Slayer completed. Neat. Okay. So, if you make changes to your current buff bars, so that's the thing I might need help with because I have not yet been able to make a change to a buff bar. But let's go ahead. In the effects window, if I go ahead and make a change in here, like if I say I don't care about the buffs, and if I accept, okay. Oh, is that what you mean? No. Well, maybe. Well, that's definitely done something weird. Is that what you were saying, Chromite? Oh, okay. And another thing you were talking about, which is a problem I can solve, is not disappearing for F12. Did it not disappear before? Like, if did it ever respond to F12 in this way? Because that is a thing. Oh, hey. Okay. So I have a debuff there. Excellent. Fun. Okay. Yeah. I assume that clears up if you log off and log back on. All right, let's close off some of those old tabs and let's go ahead and check our assumptions. So I'm going to go ahead and copy off Pengross plugins here. And this is Pengross plugins post patch. Okay, so let's see what the behavior is. So if I come into the game, to the plugin manager and unload, then let's go ahead and just start over with the pre-patch version here. Because sometimes it's just helpful to double check what has changed. So reload this, BuffBars, load, awesome. So well, that's fascinating. Where's my BuffBars? Oh, okay. Well, fortunately, a hunter went ahead and stuck me with something. Oh, I turned off all buffs. Okay, right. Let's go ahead and say all buffs, except move up. And we're going to go ahead and accept this. Cool. The show must go on. That's awesome. As much as I play a hunter, I just don't remember all the names of their stuff. Okay, so first of all, F12. Oh, that's funny. It doesn't get rid of the time on that bar. Okay. So let's start making some notes. Original. No, pre-patch, I'll call it. F12 makes window disappear, but not text of, what are we calling that? Horizontal bar icons. Okay, so that's a thing. So if I press F12 and bring it back, everything else is disappearing. Awesome. That's an easy enough thing to do for a plugin to respond to the F12, but the game itself is very inconsistent. So if I were to press F12 and then press, well, I'll wait for those to fly off the screen. If I were to press escape, we can see some of the UI has come back, but plugins do not receive that message in the same way. Now, you could probably monitor for the escape key and try to stay in sync, but we can see right now, if I press F11, BuffBars is looking for F11, but not escape. And so the kind of key to that is to, if you press escape once, okay, turn off your screen, press escape again, now everything's in sync. But it's super frustrating that the main UI can be visible, but plugins aren't told about that. So I don't know if it's possible to listen for the escape key, but if it is, that's a thing that you can do is kind of, oh, well, if I thought the screen was off and escape key is pressed, then the screen is now on again. We were doing some filming in the haunted burrow earlier today, and that button that says, leave the haunted burrow, the little skill bar thing, that was not respecting the F12 to turn off the screen. So you would phase through to a different area of the instance, or you'd run over one of the patches that makes the screen dark and back again, and that button would come back even though everything else was off. And it's like, now I have to press F12 twice to get rid of that. Like, easy fix, but this is one of those things, right? Okay. You could probably use any debuff on me, it'll probably show up. Okay. Oh, you've noticed the F12 with the escape thing. It's just one of those things. Yes, that text right there, that's a thing that in the pre-patch version is not paying attention to the F12. Cool, that's a thing that we can see. Now, the other thing was to come on in and make a change to this window. And so, effects window, buff bars. Right now, it's got all buffs and all debuffs. Let's go ahead and just delete the all debuffs, except. Okay. And then this window, we can drag it around. Sweet. We can see that did not make weird stuff. Awesome. So, okay. Change a window that dead clone problem did not happen. Okay, and what was the other? Doesn't disappear with F12. They make a change, you get a non-updating copy. And there was an update, potions for cooldowns. Okay, we'll come back on that. Sounds like you had that in hand, but now that we've seen those in the original version, let's come back in, unload this, and come on in, and now we have the post-patch files. So we'll just delete these, and copy these on in. Great. Come back in, and load. Okay, so we have this button. I assume there's a way to like shift move that button. Oh, okay. You just move it like that. Cool. And okay, so interesting. So it looks like the plugin author or patch author decided that if you have a button that overrides the visibility, that takes priority. Yeah, that's fair. It's definitely a choice. I don't even know if I'd call that a bug. Oh, Kermit says, sidetrack, what are the chicken leg and toast icons? Oh, this is, I assume you're talking about this icon here. This is actually the fire-breathing festival emote that you get from Midsummer? No, Farmer's Fair. So if you come into festival skills, that is fire-breathing potion. It was rewarded from one of those. And then the toast one is the Monster Fair. Same thing, that's a consume consumables reward. And it gives you the cool little I'm bugged out thing above your head, which I think is second only to the quest ring that you can get for one of the epic lines, Mordor? Yeah. And of course the irresistible melody, which if anyone around you is not immune to emotes, they dance for a second. Which is something you get at level 50 as a minstrel, because why not? Okay, so yeah, I don't know if I'd call this a bug so much as we gave you a button to hide the thing so you get to decide whether it's visible or not. But I could see wanting F12 to to do its thing, which is to say turn everything off. So, okay, so post patch F12 no longer makes window disappear. Now, a question is if I have a debuff of some kind on that window down there, is it still doing that thing, or was that fixed in the patch? So let's see if I can get poisoned. Come on. I'm just a little hobbit. There we go. Okay, awesome. So, interesting. Okay, so that looks like that was fixed. Although, now that window's just disappeared. I must have shook it off. All right. Okay, so in the progress of everything else, they fixed that. Nice, okay. Yes. I'm just sort of reviewing, Chromite says the F12 thing I reported is for the frozen BuffBar list when you make changes to it. Well, you say that, but this is not the frozen, this is the pre-frozen one, and it is not responding to F12. It is only responding to that button. So I guess another question, was there an option added? Oh, that's funny. They overrode the icon. Is there an option for that button? I don't see anything there. Oh, I like that. They've got a logging thing. That's nice. Okay, quick slows, effects windows, effects. Okay, so the effect window thing. Now, what we saw before is if I go ahead and add all debuffs and go ahead and move that up to the top and go ahead and accept, then we get a new window, which is fine, and then the old window sticks around. Awesome. And that is very reproducible. Change a window, dead clone problem happens. Okay, so this was just a little sanity check to see pre and post behavior and confirm that I'm seeing what you're seeing. Cool. So I guess the real question is, can we see in those patch files what on earth happened? Because it was only in these files. So let's go ahead and dig back into it a little bit. In this init, what did we see? It was the flag visible was defined there. Interesting choice. And we get the BuffBars icon. What's going on in here? Because I didn't actually look at that at all. So in here, okay. So we're saving the location of that icon. Sweet. UI locked. Update visibility. Update visibility and mount. Update visibility. Update visibility. If okay. Oh, there's a context menu. Oh, neat. Okay, I like that. That's nice. So you can right-click on that little icon, and as well as left-clicking. And then they're using the turbine.ui.context menu, which makes it look very similar to the context menu that you get when you're interacting with the UI. So you right-click, you get that list. You right-click, it's the same underlying system. So cool. Okay. So all they do is options, and they're using the L array lookup for localization. Nice. And then for the first one, because they know there's other one, they go ahead and have that show options. Lovely. And then left-clicking it. Is there an off? Oh yeah, there is an off. Nice. Okay. Flag visible false, flag visible true. Yeah, so I gotta say, I'm really not a fan of the way they just have each control just constantly asking for updates so that they can monitor whether flag visible has changed. I feel like at worst, we should just be telling each component, hey, go check that flag. And at best, we could have a callback, an event that we fire off and then they're listening for. But either way, there's just not that many places that are looking for that. In fact, I'll make a note here as we're going. So, effects window. Oops. Places that are looking for flag visible. That's effect window.lua. Excellent. Sorry, I'm just trying to. I wonder which one of these is the effect window. That's okay. Main. Okay, so they're saving the settings for that icon. And you can see the file comparison utility that I'm using down here underneath my face. You can see little dots for spaces and a double tab for a double arrow for tabs, and you can see based off of this that they were using a system that defined tabs as 4 spaces, and probably unintentionally committed the cardinal sin of mixing tabs and spaces. It happens. Okay, nothing relevant there. Quick slot bar. Okay, so this also is one of those updates. I don't know which one's the quick slot bar, but we'll come to that. Slider. Slider item, self window set parent self effects. This might be fixing that hiding thing. Excellent. What's the second one? Get parent, point to screen, self position. That's fascinating. I'm curious what that's supposed to be doing, but I don't think it's relevant here. Slider window. Have I been missing places that care? Yeah, okay. So we're gonna go ahead and get quick slot bar.lua. And nope, slider item doesn't, but slider window does. Slider window.lua. Okay. So yeah, that whole tell me every frame is just suspicious, and especially for something that's relevant for high-end gaming, I would really like to see a way around all 3 of those components, each frame being asked, hey, do you care? Hey, do you care? Hey, do you care? Quick slot bars for potions. If you get a status effect on you, poison disease when here, then it will pop up the potion for that effect. Fascinating. Okay. Obviously, I don't have experience with that. Neat. Okay, UI resources. We have an icon. Let's take a look. Okay, icon off. That's the gray. Icon on. Okay, looks like they're using the icon for the plugin manager here, which has the black background there. That's fair. So for the plugin and then off and on. Nice. Drag bar. We can see they're doing set multi-line false. I think that's interesting. I don't think it's relevant for this. But I suspect what that does is if you have an especially long name here, it doesn't make the drag bar go all wonky. In fact, we can try that out. Let's go ahead to the effects window and call the name BuffBars, but with a really long name, like really long. And go ahead and accept that. Cool, okay. So I'm guessing without the multi-line, that would have done something weird, and it did not. Now, we also have cloned off a third thing, which is really good for testing. Excellent. Okay. And then finally, the BuffBars plugin itself. Now, what's really funny is, except for all of this updating every frame thing, I don't actually see what's different. Or I should say, I don't see why this would be doing what it's doing. And so the next thing we need to do is to figure out what file, probably effect window, matches. Awesome. To whoever originally named this, thank you very much. So we have effect windows. Each one of these is an effect window. Cool. So let's find out what happens when we hit accept. Let's dig into that a little bit. Now, this is almost certainly not going to be a one-day fix, but I certainly don't mind just focusing next time, kind of circling back what we've learned today and see if we can address the performance issue and also this cloning issue, which I suspect are tied together because there's not a lot of changes going on here. We've looked at every change that happened. It's actually a really good example of kind of just the changes that the patch author was designing in, and they didn't put anything accidental in there, right? It's only what they meant to have in here. Whether it should be there or not is a different question, but they did not slip things in by accident as far as we can tell. And that's really cool. So let's go take a look at effect window. So we're going to go ahead and open up. We're going to Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins. This is in Pengoros Plugins. And, BuffBars UI. Oh, it's a bunch of UI elements. Okay, cool. And utils. Okay, let's assume that we're going to... Oh, but we care about... Oh, that's hard. Okay, I'm going to open up effect window for a moment. But accept. Let's go ahead and look for the word accept. Now, this is using localization, so it's going to be a little indirected. That's okay. Makes it a little bit more challenging as well. And we're going to look for accept. Awesome. L accept. That's being used a lot. And that's template.lua. That's fascinating and not what I meant. Okay, awesome. French.lua. Well, okay, fine. We'll look at how it's used. Effect trigger window, options panel. Sweet, okay. We're in the options panel. Let's take a look at this. Right, so I'm just happy to see your brain working on this. I love seeing how you think and notice all the little problems / quirks and possibly finding fixes and workarounds. Well, I will try, and I do want to emphasize, just because I see something and go, doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong or bad. But it might be that we can make an improvement. And that's the key thing, is just incremental tweaks over time makes it better for everyone. Kermit says, a lot of people use BuffBars, so getting this fixed and working properly will help a lot of people. Awesome. That is lovely because, I mean, as much as I love the MinstrelBuffs plugin, it is very niche, right? You play anything but a minstrel you just do not care about, and in fact, you do not want it loaded on at all. Okay, so we have buttons, we have revert, defaults, and accept. Oh, does that have a tooltip? Oh, lovely. I love tooltips. Save and apply any changes made to the BuffBar options. Lovely, excellent. And actually, there's something I really like here, and something I have been thinking about incorporating is the localization systems. There's different ways to do it. And this is using one where you say, here is the string to localize. And depending on whether you're English, French, or German, or Russian, or whatever, there is an entry to convert that into either itself or the French or German or whatever version of that string. And so this is really, on the one hand, it's probably not as performant. It's not as fast as a lookup as just a number, an index into an array or something. But it's really obvious when you're reading this what is going to happen here. You're going to get text that means save and apply any changes made to the BuffBar, right? You do not have to guess based off of some naming system for the plugin what is going to happen here. And when you do a search for that text, save and apply, you come right here. This is the style that's used, so Microsoft Visual Studio, when you're doing resource files for localization, you can use the same thing where you have the text in the code, and behind the scenes it uses that and looks up the localization for, it's basically a no-op if you're in the same language, but if you're in another language, it can look that up. And because it's compiled, it can do it faster than maybe this lookup is. But this is for an options window. We're doing it once. We're not doing it rapidly. And so I think this is a fine trade-off. It makes it very readable. You can read through this text and know exactly what's going to be displayed if you're in English, or what concepts are being displayed. So I love this. I want to make use of it more. And we can see in the locale here what that looks like. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so if we look at L accept, its entry is just going to be the French version of that. But they just, now the downside of this is it is fragile. If I turned this double space into a single space, it breaks the lookup. It no longer works. And so it's a trade-off. It looks really nice. It's really easy to read. It's fragile. You cannot make the change here without remembering to immediately make the change elsewhere. So, trade-off, right? So watch out for that if you incorporate it yourself. That being said, back on track here. Self-accept, great. Okay, well, we know that's a function. Options cannot accept, save options, then BuffBars reset state. So each one of these could be where we're looking at. So let's look at save options first. Okay, we go through each of the tabs and we save them. Great. That's okay. Options, let's see. Effect panel, that could be. We had, let's see, options general panel, okay. Options quick slot panel. There's an effect slider. Okay, slider panel, and then effects window. Okay, I feel like options effect window might be what's going on in here. That's a lot of stuff. Neat. Okay, so select the effect window you'd like to modify. Great. So we know we're in the right place for here. Save options. Save the current Windows settings. Collect all the windows into an array. So that window, get item count, and then overwrite the existing windows. Well, that's a suspiciously ominous thing to say. Let's take a look at that. Overwrite the existing windows. Set windows. Settings, set windows, windows. Okay. But what is get item? Is this just a string? Probably just a string. So let's go ahead and look up settings, set windows. Set the effects windows. This will put them in the correct settings area based on scope. Okay. Window, table insert, character, account, window. All right. Local settings, that. None of that seems weird. Or rather, none of that seems like it would lead to the effect that we're watching. So let's put a pin in that and kind of roll back up to the next thing. We were looking at BuffBars reset state. I don't know what that is, but that sounds dramatic. Let's take a look. BuffBars. All right. Pairs plugins.buffbars.reset state. All right, I'm game. Let's go ahead and just do a search. Okay, we see a function, reset state. Awesome. Destroy the existing effects windows. Well, that certainly sounds like something that is not happening properly. Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and assume that that's our problem, because that, by design, it seems like when you save, it's trying to destroy and recreate. You know? Yeah, create new effects. And it is creating a new effect, it's just not doing the destroy. I'm guessing because we're getting an update function that's somehow keeping it alive. That's my current theory. And so let's dig into this. Destroy the existing effects window. Okay, so we have a list of effects windows, and we're calling destroy. Let's see what that is supposed to do. Okay, so set visible false. Now that's delightful because we know that in this update function, which is going to fire really soon, we're going to just set that back to true, right? So that's something. Okay, so we're in destroy. Set visible, mouse click equals nil. Okay, this is why the drag bar disappears. I don't know if you saw that, but the drag bar disappears off the window. So if the drag bar is not equal nil, hide it and set its target. So we're not really getting rid of it, but it will get cleaned up maybe, or at least the memory is probably going to get cleaned up. That's cool. Removing listener. That's probably why you can't interact with it anymore, because the listeners are gone. Nice. And then we should be calling destroy on each of those bars. Okay, what is a bar? Effect bar? No. Okay, what are you? What would you say you do here? Effect bars equals... I was really hoping for something a little bit more definitive. Bars equals... Okay, that's an array. We're inserting... Okay, so there's a settings bar order. Killing me. Okay, bar map, bar... Okay, neat. Excellent. Insert that. Lovely, okay. So if that was an effect item, let's guess. What is destroy supposed to do in here? Set visible to false, set once updates false, set mouse click equals nil. What's really interesting is destroy seems to be a misnomer here, right? Like by destroy, we're just saying hide it, and maybe some of this gets cleaned up. But really, shouldn't there be like a self.bars I equals nil in here? Like, let's go ahead and clear out that reference. There is almost certainly some sort of garbage management, automatic garbage collection kind of thing, where unreferenced memory should just get cleaned up. I would guess that Lua uses that kind of a memory model. That being said, Lua memory management. Garbage collection. Let's find out more. Lua uses a garbage collector. Lovely. When objects are no longer accessible. So these bars, we're calling destroy on them, but we still have a reference to them. An effects window, we called destroy on that, but we don't have a reference to it. So that seems like that should initiate garbage collection, which reminds me of a fascinating problem I had the other day. Anyway, sorry. So it would seem like this should remove references to that window. So I think it's this update function, right, where we have said we want an update. Let's see. Set wants updates true. So regardless of whether we should be doing this every frame, it's at least a Boolean check. Also, this is... So a common thing to want to do is to say, if this is true, then do this thing. If this is false, do this other thing. But notice that flag visible, if it's true, we want to call true, and if it's false, we want to call false. This whole function could be set visible, flag visible. This does not need to be there, right? It's fine for right now, but this function is this pattern is unnecessary. But that's okay. Set want updates to true. In destroy, we need, as well as set visible, we also need set want updates to be false, so that if it was wanting updates, it is no longer wanting updates. And if we do that, if we hit unload, let's come back in and let's start trying to break things. So we have BuffBars, and we're just going to go ahead and... Was changing a name enough to do it? Because this name is really silly. BuffBars 1. I think it was probably enough. So if we hit accept, we can see it flickered because it got removed and recreated, and we can move this around. So that's a really simple change, right? Like that's a one-liner in effects window in the destroy function. We need to turn that once updates off. Now the real solution is it should never have been on like that in the first place from a performance perspective. You just want to, in general, avoid doing stuff in an update function all the time if you can avoid it. Now, I say that, but earlier I was working in the MinstrelBuffs plugin, and the MinstrelBuffs plugin, oh, it's not on right now. MinstrelBuffs plugin uses the update function to resize the timers here. So this control here is using the update, and every update is just rescaling that white line to be a little less big, changing the color, and now it says set once update false, right? So, but that's kind of how you have to do it. Now you can optimize in there. You can check how long has it been. Oh, I only want to know every so often. You can do less work or opt out as early as possible. Anyway, all that being said, set once updates false here fixes that problem, because that window will hide and stop setting itself to being visible over and over and over and over again. Now, there's an underlying question of why could that window stick around and do that? But it might be that Lotro itself was keeping a reference to the object because it knew it wanted an update, and so it needed to be able to call this function. I want to hope that's it, because otherwise every time you make a change and save, that old window is still sticking around there just hidden, which is probably okay if you're not making a bunch of changes in the middle of a raid and consuming your memory. It's probably fine. So what's going on here? And that's the deeper question. So I think let's circle back around next week, and we will go ahead and next week we will look at the set once update true pattern, see if we can fix it to be more performant, and make a patch for whatever we do, plus the effect window .lua line 182 addition of set once updates false. Okay, so excellent suggestion, Chromite. I really have been meaning to dig into BuffBars. People have spoken very highly of it, so I'm really excited to get a chance to get my hands on the code underneath it. And if it makes it better for everyone else, all the better. So let me just refresh my memory. You said BuffBars added a patch for a button. Yes. Doesn't disappear with F12. Oh, okay, so we still have that. You know, I think it's actually this, because we continually say set visible. So I think addressing that next week, we'll look into that. If you make a change to a BuffBar, you can non-updating a copy of it. Cool, we know what's going on there and why. And the potions, I'm not ready to tackle potions, so cool. Okay, so yeah, we will add a note here. Does fixing this mean F12 works for the buff effect windows again? Awesome. Cool, so that's a next week thing. In the meantime, if you are watching either live or on the replay, and you use BuffBars, you can go to the effect window.lua, line 182, and add self : capital S, capital W, capital U, set wants updates, parentheses, false, close parentheses, semicolon. Add that into that function. We can probably go anywhere, but we want it to be the first thing. And you will stop having the problem of these kind of dead clone windows popping up every time you do an update. Just simply type that in. In fact, I'll go ahead and put that into chat. Add to effect window.lua, line 182, bam. That's all you need to fix it for now. Next week, I hope to go ahead and wrap what we've learned up into a patch, put it out there. It'll be a patch that will incorporate the effects of what they have done, probably. So it'll just be a delta on top of that, which is kind of a bummer because it's like, sometimes I would like to just include their stuff and the changes necessary. But they have a lot of changes. I think it'll just be a patch on that patch for now, and we'll see how that goes. Now, plugins, something that occurs to me is plugins like TitanBar have been kind of taken over by new plugin developers to keep them alive. I do notice BuffBars doesn't seem to have been updated in quite a long time. It might be that Pengros is no longer an active contributor to the community. It could be worth someone taking this over and starting to do more live maintenance of it, if only to roll the patch into the mainline so that when you download BuffBars, you get everything that Galapagos also contributed. I don't think I'm ready to do that, but if that sounds like an interesting thing, we could certainly look into kind of replacing this BuffBars entry with BuffBars 2001 or something. I don't know. But in the meantime, this was a cool exercise. Thank you so much, Chromite, for the suggestion. And I hope this was amusing to watch me struggle to understand how this awesome plugin works. All right, so we've hit the top of the hour. So if there's any other chat or comments to throw in, toss it in there real fast. And we will start wrapping up by starting to close all of these different things I've opened. All right, I'm going to save off these notes somewhere a little bit more permanent. All right. I have a Google Docs where I'm just tracking that so that next time I will have access to that. Excellent. Rocky Malvia asks, will the compendium update the patches too, or only the changes from the creator? That's a good question. There are patches. Oops. Well, that's silly. There are patches in Lotro plugin compendium. For example, buff monitor with quick slots is present in the compendium. Now, the way that works, let me just go ahead and add that in, is we can see that it flashed by real fast, but first, Lotro plugin compendium downloaded the patch, and then it saw as a requirement for that, it needed the base. So it downloaded the base, installed that, and then continued with the patch. So if we come back out and look at that, we can see, P-Tweety, I think? Yeah. We can see that the buff monitor plugin... Oh, okay. So it looks like the way Thurlord did that was by having a second buff monitor quick slots plugin compendium entry. And with that, we can see there was a dependency on 521. And not surprisingly, if we come into buff monitor, we can see that buff monitor is entry 521. So Thurlord in his, or I should say in their plugin compendium file here, we have a dependency 521 pointing at buff monitor. And so that's a way a patch can be entered into plugin compendium, and you can install the patch with plugin compendium, and that just plugin compendium knows to install the base first, the actual plugin, and then the patch. But that's not an automatic thing. The patch developer needs to incorporate that into their patch and then ask for their patch to be included in the plugin compendium. Now, the reason to roll these into the mainline, like I was mentioning before with TitanBar, is I put out a patch last week for TitanBar, but the changes for this have already been rolled in by Duriel, awesome, thanks Duriel, into the main line. So you no longer need to worry about installing the patch. You just install TitanBar and you get it all for free. So if there's an active developer for the plugin, I think it's superior to get it into the main plugin code as soon as possible. Then everyone gets it whether they know the patch exists or not. But in the case where the original plugin developer is no longer available, no longer actively part of the community, then you can do what we've seen with TitanBar, where different people kind of take it over and republish TitanBar with their changes, but it's under a new name. So if we sort by date here, we can see the first TitanBar from Havna was last updated in 2014, and then Thorondor seems to have done some patchwork, and then Technical 13 took it over, and then Duriel took it over, and my patch needs to go away at some point. But so as people kind of phase out and go away, this is a way to kind of keep the plugin going. So you inherit the code, make changes, publish it under basically the same name, but as a new user, and people can just kind of migrate over time. So I don't know if that, hopefully that answered your question, Rocky, but patches are not inherently in plugin compendium, but they can be. Awesome. Rocky says yes. Great. I'm sure somewhere in my words there was an answer. Okay. Well, I think we are at a great stopping point. I think a little redhead in my ear is pointing out that Extra Life stream is coming up this Saturday, November the 6th. I think it's an all-day affair. 12 or more hours of streaming by a variety of streamers, possibly including some SSG employees, but definitely a lot of the Lotro streamers that you've seen here on the official Lotro Stream Twitch channel. Do check it out. I don't know if they'll be publishing a schedule ahead of time. I'm a little bit behind on such things, but pop if you can, donate to Extra Life. It's a good cause. If you can't, it's okay. Come join us anyway. We're going to be having a good time. Oh, there will be giveaways. There'll be code giveaways, so you'll enter raffles all throughout the day, and they'll be giving away codes for in-game pets. If it's like last year, it'll be in-game pets and mounts and all sorts of cool things. Lotro points, there were giveaways last year. So you just enter the raffle via Twitch, and you might be a winner. All right, am I missing anything for Extra Life? Oh, if you are financially struggling, don't contribute. It's fine. Other people will contribute, and it's one of those things where we definitely don't want anyone to put make their own life a lot harder to contribute to this kind of thing. It is a good cause, but it's not that good, right? Like, take care of yourself first, and then contribute if you have the means. Oh, good. Little Redhead has put some streamers in there. Excellent. Oh, MVP is confirmed. Neat. All right. Well, in that case, that is all we are going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of Lotro plugins, specifically MinstrelBuffs and BuffBars. I do hope to see you next week. Until then, keep plugging along. All right. Bye-bye now.